Hello, I'm Loraine DeBonis, Editor-in-Chief of Paybefore, and we're here at the All Payments Expo in New Orleans. We're here with Ethical Hacker Jamie Woodruff, and he's going to talk to us today a little bit about what an ethical hacker is and cybersecurity issues in the payments industry. Jamie, thank you for being here.
No problem.
So, for the uninitiated, what's an ethical hacker?
So I have like a strict code of ethics that I follow. So I'm certified to work within the financial sector. So I can't just breach into systems unethically or pursue it unethically. So that's what I kind of do. I follow a guide, essentially. So let's say if your company needed an ethical hacker, then you'd call someone like me, which then assess the situation, kind of work out the scope of the situation, and then follow a strict guideline. So I can only see certain amounts of information that you'd like me to see, so a certain scope. And then everything's kept confidential. All the findings are obviously kept confidential, and then I help work with you guys to put steps ahead in future to help get breaches.
So companies actually hire you to try to breach their system so they can figure out where the holes are.
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. So one of the issues that comes up a lot of times in payments right now, everybody says the threats are evolving. And so I'm just curious, how do you, so obviously if you're finding holes, you can see where they need to fix, but just from a general standpoint, how can companies prepare for evolving threats? What are the best practices?
Within the financial kind of sector, a lot of, like, for instance, banking institutes, I mean, they're perfectly fine. They have your like three-factor authentication. You have to type a code into a special device that gives you a key, and then vice versa. Whereas the threat in regards to, I'd mentioned blockchain, we're seeing a lot of hackers now that are creating viruses and malware to actually use your computers to actually mine that kind of bitcoins or mine them blockchains. So the dangers is obviously from the malware perspective. The companies themselves are very secure, but the end users are people that don't really understand security. They don't really take it seriously. They could be downloading movies, for example, from torrent sites that could be infected, and then in turn their devices and systems could be used to obviously create that chain.
So you mean like the employees would be downloading things to the bank's computers?
Not so much the employees. I mean, the banking computers themselves, like I said, they're quite secure. There's certain amount of people that can get access to them. A lot of them are actually offline in their own little data centers. The majority of what we see in like transaction perspectives from logging in, I mean, you need numerous types of information. So it's not so much easier. It's much easier to steal your credit card than it is to actually break in online.
Sure. Okay, so let's go back to ethical hacking for a minute. Can you talk a little bit about some of your experiences or things that you found that maybe were pretty surprising for your clients, maybe not as surprising to you?
Well, another one that's not so much relatable, it could be from a financial perspective, is there's quite a large chip manufacturer, and these guys create chips for numerous devices. We're looking laptops, tablets, phones. So they called me up in Singapore, and they was like, Jamie, these guys are copying our chips. They're using our schematics. We have no idea how they're doing it. So I went. It took me nearly 6 months, and I worked out that this rival third-party company had access for nearly 3 years to their systems. So every time they was publishing stuff online, publishing schematics privately and closed, the employee was just viewing it and then obviously then passing it over to the third party. So obviously they had access to their systems. They could then in turn manufacture the chips much cheaper because they understood them. And obviously the manufacturer was at a loss, like a huge loss in profits.
So was this an employee that was helping the third party,
no,
or somebody inadvertently?
It was a system that got compromised and was left to kind of one side, and wasn't really up to date with regards to patches. I mean, when I look inside of systems, I can tell what's supposed to be there, if it's a Linux-based system or a Windows-based system, an operating system, and I can actually work that out. So I can tell that that's not supposed to be there, or this is not supposed to be there, or that's supposed to be there, but it isn't, and then obviously put a plan in place to kind of help. So in that instance, we actually put a plan to catch the individual out. So he was able to catch the individual, and he got prosecuted.
Great. So just to end with, what do you think about, what are the trends that are kind of shaping what companies are calling you to help them with, or
a lot of them, what I'm actually seeing is, I mean, I say this at all my conferences, is disgruntled employees. I mean, that's a biggie that people need to understand and take into consideration. I mean, another kind of example that I give is that there's a high-profile a director in a company, and he needed a personal assistant. They just left, and you know what it's like. I mean, I'm the same with my personal assistant. I need things doing, and I need organisation. So what they actually did was they took on an individual that they found through a CV and give her access to everything in a matter of days. Didn't check the references, didn't look through the references, didn't look at the past employment history. 2 weeks later, she disappears as this girl, and what she'd actually been doing is faxing and emailing stuff from his personal account to a third-party rival company. So at the end of the day, it was obviously the company's fault for employing her without actually seeing the correct credentials per se, but it was also the individual's fault as well for actually breaching the security by doing that. So again, it's down to the disgruntled employees. So in the payment industry, I'd suggest that individuals have access to the technology that they need, have access to the credentials that they need. Don't share passwords. I mean, that's a big thing. I mean, a lot of employees, they write passwords on sticky notes, believe it or not, or even in the diary, and I see this all the time. So it's just them kind of steps to help prevent yourself. But the payment industry itself is relatively secure. I wouldn't worry about it from an end user perspective. It's the end users that I'd worry for, but what they're doing in regards to their personal security. So if I could make a suggestion to the payment industry, it'd obviously roll out antiviruses and security to the end user to help protect them, because obviously it's the companies themselves that look bad, it's not the end user, because they don't really understand it.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much for your time today.
Pleasure.
We really appreciate it. Once
Thank
again,
you.
this is Jamie Woodruff, Ethical Hacker. Thank you.
Thank you.